Oh, by the way, I'm Will. Nice. I met some of you immediately before, but now I'm meeting some new people. I will forget all of your names. Who are you?
No clue.
I will forget people's names. I'm sorry about that. It's not because I'm a terrible person. I just forget names and faces and where I live. So I will do my best, but I apologise in advance because I will forget your name. I'm happy, however, to be led by you and to do whatever you like in terms of what this summary is. So I've written up like a couple of thoughts, different kinds of arguments that come up in feminist debates, ways of thinking about feminism. I've also got a session which emerged in the course of me thinking about feminism, which is it might be useful to sort of talk about rights first. I'm not convinced I have less than an hour's material, if you see what I mean, because I can ramble forever. Up to you. So, people, what do you want to talk about? Was that far too fast? No. I have two sorts of things. I have the feministy sets of things, but in the course of writing the feministy sets of things, it also occurred to me that rights sorts of things, how to think about rights and debates about rights, might also be useful. Given that over there they're doing kind of debate theory and this is a content seminar, as it will, I thought I may as well just write up both, which I've now done. So, do people have preferences?
Rights in general.
You want rights in general? Would anyone be extremely cross if we spoke about rights? Anyone who would be extremely cross should realise that I will rant almost infinitely about feminism at any point if anyone wants me to. I find feminism brilliant and fun and I love it. So if people want to do that, that's also very much the sort of thing I would be happy to do.
So why don't you start with feminism and go on to rights?
Well, I think it makes more sense to talk about rights before feminism, if you will, if only because rights is a much more expansive category, and feminism, I think, is a sort of little subset of motions to do with gender and all the rest of it. Hello. Is the aircon on in this room?
Yeah. Only if the door's closed all the way.
Why is this file not opening? Screw you. Well, if this file doesn't open, then it's sort of made its mind up for me. If you see what I mean.
Yeah.
Here we are, got it. Shall I take a vote? Rights? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Feminism? 2. Sorry guys, I will not be in the least bit offended if you fuck off at this point. No? Alright, just you're charming, you're absolutely charming. Feminism is still on the table though. Health warning then, on how to think about rights, is that I am speaking as someone whose academic training is in philosophy. If you got this talk from a lawyer, if you got this talk from, I don't know, any other one trained differently, my sense is that they would give you a different lecture. However, a lot of the people that do judge you also have academic training in philosophy. What that means is they think about rights in a particular way and understand them in a particular sort of set of contexts. My sense is that rights are spoken about extremely badly in debating in general, and in the wrong places, and so this, if anything, you should think of as a little bit of intellectual hygiene, because right now I think we kind of use rights when basically what we mean is a nice thing. And I'm going to suggest that there are useful and interesting arguments to be made about rights, which people kind of forget about. So, two sorts of things we're going to talk about: when to talk about rights, and how to talk about rights. Which I think sort of covers it. So let's talk about when. First up thought is that saying that X is a right, so education is a right, or not being tortured is a right, is not the same as saying education is a thing we like, or not being tortured is a thing that we like. I'm inclined to write things up, because I like writing things up. Makes me feel like I'm giving a proper presentation. There are two ways to think about what making a rights argument really involved. The first way, I will write it down, I will. And that's going to love this. So X, you are X. Oh, I'm not going to write anything up. All right, fine.
There's another one right below your computer.
Excellent. The first way of thinking about what it would mean if we say a right exists, so let's have a character called X. X is a gnat. Where phi is any verb of action. So if a gnat has a right to education, or not be tortured, or not be conscripted, or anything else, right? If we're having a debate about pornography, if a gnat has a right to be a pornographer, the first way to think about what it means to say that a gnat has a right is to say that a gnat's choices are to be protected over that thing, right? So examples where we would make this, there are any number of examples. Pornography is in fact a classic one, right? Where we go, what we mean by people have a right to pornography is that their choices about whether or not they use their body in this way, or the choice women make when they choose whether or not to be a prostitute, are choices which are important and have to be protected. And this is a thought which is connected in some way to liberty. And if you are going to make an argument about someone's choices being important, and that's why the rights are important, this thought is connected in some way to liberty. There is another way of thinking about what this means, because people often don't mean when they say children have a right to education, that the choices of children over education ought to be protected. That doesn't sound right, that wasn't what we meant. What we mean by saying children have a right to education is they ought to have it. We mean something like, by saying that they have a right to education, that they have a fundamental interest. The terminology is not that important, I'm not stealing it from anywhere, but the idea is important. The idea here is, by saying that children have a right to education, we don't mean that they should be making choices about education. What we mean is, it is fundamental that they get it, right? That they deserve to have it, and they have a right to demand it if people do not give it to them. That's not going to be an argument about liberty first up. It might be an argument about liberty later, but for the first moment, if you're making an argument about what what people are owed in that way, you're making, well, I've just used the word, you're making an argument about what people are owed. What you can think of as desert. Entitlement, fine, same thing. Stuff. We are owed. Usually by the state. Usually we mean the state there, but not necessarily. It might mean that children have certain rights vis-à-vis their parents. We might mean that spouses have certain rights vis-à-vis their ex-wives or ex-husbands. Any number of cases. But the first thing is that these are different, and we're going to look through a couple of cases later and show how they pan out differently.
Just one question?
Sure.
I'm not sure if this already fits in the picture, but I'm just wondering how positive discrimination is fitting.
So, well, tell me more, which is the case?
Because in a sense they have a right to do all of those things, but then the state also in a sense has the duty to further agency, in a sense the same way that the state forces, primary school children to go to school.
Okay, so for example, if we were a classic positive discrimination, women in parliament, right? Something like that. It doesn't, so it seems first up that if we're sort of just first wave feminists, is everyone familiar with the idea of what a first wave feminist is? Shall we open a document window on that? Right, document window on the three waves of feminism. Ooh. I will come back to that though, I'll remember it if I write up women in parliament. Right, fine, I'll remember that, don't let me forget that. To massively oversimplify the struggle of women for emancipation and full autonomy and liberty in the past century, there are three waves. One, the first wave is the struggle for formal legal equality under law. That women have the right to divorce as man does. That women have the right to own land, to inherit property as a man does. That women have the right to stand for Parliament as a man does. So that strictly move under law. If you want a classic statement of that, you should read John Stuart Mill's The Subjection of Women, which is a great book, including the best possible argument for educating women, which goes, what man wants a wife he can't talk to? A wonderfully misogynist argument for letting women be educated. But anyway, formal equality before the law is wave one. That is the job, right? That is all it means to be a feminist. And all it means for women to be liberated is just for the laws to not discriminate. So back to this, we can see that women in Parliament are not generally prevented from standing. They are not generally prevented from raising money, or giving speeches, or joining political parties, or anything like that. It remains the case that less than a third of women in Britain, less than a third of parliamentarians in Britain are women. How many parliamentarians in Israel are female?
9, if I remember correctly.
Out of?
120.
Whoa. Okay, so, in deference to facts like that, wave two. Okay? Wave two says a couple of things. Firstly, it says that is not enough, right? What we are up for is substantive or like genuine or actual, simplest word there, equality. What does that mean? That the job of feminism is not to arrive at a world where the laws do not discriminate. Like, the job of feminism is to arrive at a world where women are not poorer than men, where women are not underrepresented in the strategic elite posts of the state, the legal profession, the civil service, the army, politics, the media, right? That what we are actually after is a world where women and men are genuinely equal, and it is appropriate for the state to act coercively in order to bring that about. So the sort of person who wants positive discrimination for women in Parliament is probably going to be a second-wave feminism. One of the things they're going to say is, even if there are less women in Parliament because women are choosing not to enter Parliament, that is not good enough, and that is outrageous. And the reason why they're going to say that is they're going to say that the identity of women in the world today is constructed by institutions. What does that mean? Thought A, thought B. What that means is to say that who you are, what you regard as important to you, what you regard as appropriate conduct for yourself, how you feel about what you should and should not do, what you do and do not dream about, didn't drop from the sky. It was created, and it was created in a million different, tiny, imperceptible ways by every institution you ever encountered the entirety of your life, starting when your mother handed you a doll or a tractor. That your identity did not in some magical way exist outside the fact that for your entire life you were told that a woman who expresses her sexuality is a slut, and a man who does so is a stud player, whatever, right? That identity is constructed. Who is it constructed by? The people who are in charge. Who are the people in charge? Say it with me.
Men.
Thank you. You're getting it. And why do they construct femininity the way they do?
To oppress us.
Right. Why does femininity oppress women?
Because it decreases your choices.
Femininity is about being a victim, right? So part of the idea is that women are conditioned, socialized through institutions to aspire to being losers, right? The highest dream for a woman to be raising a fat family where she works her entire life 7 days a week, more than any reasonable unionized workplace would allow her to work for. How much money? No money when she raises her family. That women dream about wearing nice clothes which make them look more sexually attractive to men. That women spend vast